Hello and welcome to more reading of this fan fiction, which is I Scream by the Neopolitan. It's a great name. Glad that Neo is writing this. So we're just going to get right into it. Chapter 10, which is just called Chapter 10, which, is what all of them are called, but it's a little disappointing. Could have come up with some chapter names. That would have been pretty good. Anyways. I watched from a rooftop as a large fight rose up as the nearby huntsmen and huntresses tried to fight the swarm of attacking Grimm. The lieutenant had gone off to check on his men and to tend to his wounded, leaving Roman and I to wait on the roof of a nearby building for Cinder's next command. While I waited, I quickly found Team Rainbow and watched them closely. They were a talented group. Rach and Mora fought together to take down the largest Ursa I had ever seen into Beowulf. They worked together flawlessly. Mora spun her giant, nevermore feathered fan around, blocking both the Ursa and the Beowulf's attacks even more effectively than my umbrella. As the Ursa swung and the other Grimm lunged in and out, the fan was there to block. Mora seemed to be doing a dance as she spun about, breaking the large fan into two smaller ones and putting them back together again as needed. Perhaps one of the most beautiful things about her fighting style was the way that she matched with Raish. Mora swung the fan around herself and Raish, blocking for both of them. She spun in a circle, gracefully swinging her fans about. Raish danced with her as well. She matched Mora's movement pace, sometimes ducking under a fan or stepping over Mora's arm. They weren't quite touching, but still, Sorry, They weren't quite touching, but still very close, especially for fighting. Rach was the attacking part of this duo. She threw her daggers deeply into the enemy, and used her arcane marks to summon them back, also kicking between fan movements. It was amazing how well they worked together, almost as if they knew each other's moves before they made them. I looked closer and saw both girls spun through their dance. They came to face each other? Without stopping, Raish gave Mora a quick kiss on the cheek before throwing a dagger through an Ursa's head. Mora blushed a deep red, and she reached around Raish to block an attack from another Grimm. I blinked in surprise. Oh, they were together. I didn't know that. They were really cute. It also explains how they knew each other's movements so well. I smiled down at the cute couple and looked for the other two. Both had perched himself on the top of a car and was firing arrows with his incredible speed and precision. His special bag filled with each arrow with a different kind of dust. The control for it was located on his bow. About 7 smaller Grimms surrounded his car. He quickly pulled 2 arrows out of his bag and fired them all at once. That's not really great. You can't fire 2 arrows all at once, because, yeah. Anyways, it's not how numbers work. Hold on. One was filled with fire. It exploded flames between 2 Grimm. They screamed as the flames burned them, but their pain was short-lived. The initial explosion knocked them back into sharp stones that had been torn up when the train crashed through. They fired on impact. The second arrow had been filled with ice dust and froze the next 2 Grimm solid. The third arrow I almost missed. He had created it in the last moment with his aura. It was a light green bolt of energy. It shot at 2 more Grimm quick like a bolt of lightning. It struck the ground between them, illuminating a small circle with energy and electrocuting them. One Grimm was untouched by all of the effects of the arrows, and it lunged at him. While it was in the air, Bolt took a normal arrow from his quiver, twirled it in his fingers as he avoided the Grimm's claws, and ranged the arrow up through its jaw and into its skull. It went limp, and he used the momentum to throw it to the side, pulling his arrow out as he did so. He put it back into his quiver, reloaded it with dust, and fired it at more Grimm nearby. Then my eyes drifted to Wolf. He stepped as he swung his axe, using the motion to strengthen his attack. It chopped the head of a Beowulf clean off. Another Grimm leaped at him, fangs aimed for his throat. I tensed, but not too badly. I knew how well Wolf could fight. I did have a hand in training him after all. He blocked the wolf with the long handle of his axe, and with a twirling motion, he buried the blade into the Beowulf's head. He then tucked the crook of his blade against his shoulder and held the handle out towards the beasts. A small handle and trigger popped out of the handle and used it to fire rounds of dust. A few hit the wolves, taking them out just like Bolt's arrows had, but there were too many and dust rounds weren't cheap. Yeah, thanks to Roman. More Grimm surrounded him. They lunged in and out at random points. Wolf twirled his axe around, blocking and hacking at a few. Somehow, during his twirling movements, he managed to pull a few dust rounds out of his axe handle. When he had a brief moment, he threw the shells to the ground, causing them to explode. Before the dust affected him, he quickly Oh, what is that? Are you kidding me right now? That's not what I meant to do. Kidding me right now? God damn it. Okay. Before the dust had affected him, he quickly activated his semblance. His burnt red-colored aura took the form of 3 small wolves. Looking closely, I could see that they resembled red wolves more than gray wolves. But it was an easy thing to miss when you were busy fighting for your life. They absorbed the dust that had erupted from the rounds that Wolf had thrown to the ground and took on their properties. While they were still Wolf's red aura color, they took slightly different forms. The one from fire dust was practically made of flames. The coat of the second one crackled with visible electricity, and the third seemed to be made of very thin ice, with the red glowing inside of it. The pack of aura wolves, along with Wolf's axe, finished off the circle of Grimm quickly, and the aura faded, leaving Wolf panting from keeping it going so long. It didn't seem to bother them, though, as he quickly rushed to the aid of a first-year huntress, one I didn't recognize. Does someone have a little crush? Roman mocked, coming closer to the side of the building. Just rolled my eyes, making them switch colors in annoyance. He was right, though. If Cinder saw me staring this way, we'd be busted. How careless could I possibly be? Instead, I walked past Roman, walking to the edge and looking down. I was still able to see Wolf and the team out of the corner of my eye. Roman, a familiar voice said calmly, yet with enough rage to set the world on fire. I turned my eyes from the fight below to across the roof where Cinder and her 2 henchmen were waiting. Ah, Cinder, I can explain, you see, Roman began, trying to babble out some poor excuse. Silence, Cinder commanded, raising her voice only slightly. Her eyes narrowed dangerously in a way that made even me want to step back. Roman for once kept his mouth shut and stared at her with wide eyes, like a child who knew that they were going to get spanked. She walked closer to us, her anklet clinked lightly, even the sound made the hair stand up on my arms. She was about 2 or 3 yards from me, and but she still made me nervous. I scolded myself and held my ground. I was a henchman. I should not be cowering from some cinder witch, I told myself, yet I still couldn't bring my eyes to hers. Damn. You failed me, Roman, she purred, sending shivers down my spine. Her glare was so powerful even Roman couldn't talk back. You will be punished. She brought her glare over to me, and I immediately dropped my gaze, one of my eyes going white. She gestured to Mercury and Emerald on the other end of the building with her chin and told me, Go over there and talk to them, sweet little one. The adults have to talk. This comment ticked me off so much I can't even put it into words, but she was my boss's boss. I lifted my chin defiantly. Oh my god. I lifted my chin defiantly, not looking her in the eyes, and stalked over to her 2 henchmen. Play nice, you 3, she called after me. I could tell by Cinder's tone and the way that Cinder braced herself, and by the way that Mercury grinned, that this was a type of order. I strutted over with confidence and a big smirk. I flicked over my umbrella and twirled it lightly, taunting them. I had a reputation to uphold, after all. Unlike my fight with Yang, I knew absolutely nothing about them or their fighting styles. I had only heard rumors, usually about their assassination missions. Jesus. All of them had been successful. No doubt I was wary of their skills, but I had skills of my own. I came to stop very close to them, forming a triangle and not backing down. Chapter 11. I stood in front of Mercury and Emerald, smirking confidently at them. Both were taller than me, which was something that I was used to. Cinder's words seemed to echo around us, even blocking out the shouting and grim snarls from below. Play nice, you three. This was going to be a fight. If I could last until Roman and Cinder were done with their little chat, I wouldn't have to finish the fight, so I kept my ears open. Mercury was the first to attack. In a flash of gray, he kicked out at me with his boots. Without hesitation, I blocked his shot with my closed umbrella and retaliated by jabbing him in the stomach with my umbrella. I added enough force to send him sliding back. Come on! You don't put two verbs right next to each other. It doesn't work like that. Both of them would work. Not together. Independently, they would work. Jesus. But he kept his balance easily. Emerald didn't wait a single moment to attack. She flipped open her two green sickles and swung them at me. I ducked under the first, using one hand to shove it farther away, and hit the second one away with my umbrella before aiming a solid kick to her now exposed stomach. My kicks were powerful, and Emerald was sent flying and landed on her back. She propped herself up on her elbows, gritted her teeth, and growled in annoyance. I smirked back at her silently. Not surged my eye colors. What? She hadn't seen me do this before and gasped in shock. Mercury nodded his head in approval of my skills and my eye trick. That's pretty good, little ice cream treat, he told me. I glared at him, aiding the name that he just called me. He sighed dramatically and continued running his mouth. It's too bad that Cinder ordered Em and me to take care of you, but here's the deal. If you manage to survive until she's done scolding Roman, we'll let you live. I swore mentally, remembering that I was supposed to be listening in on whatever Cinder was saying. I glanced back at her and my boss. Whatever she decided to do to Roman would affect whatever would happen to me. You failed me, Roman. You should know better than anyone else that I do not tolerate failure. You will be punished, Cinder told him, making Roman cower in fear. Mercury took advantage of my distraction. I just badly saw him move out of the corner of my eye. It was too late to move. All I could do was brace myself. He kicked me in the side towards the bottom part of my ribs. He hit me with enough force to throw me back. I landed on my back but used the momentum to roll to my feet. As I finished my updated motion, I flicked open my umbrella and placed a hand on my hip. I grinned at him, acting as if attack had no effect on me. I cussed mentally, though. Damn it hurt. A few more kicks like that and I'd be done for. Emerald was already on her feet. She quickly changed her sickles into two hand pistols. She fired shots at me from both of them. I blocked all of the shots with my umbrella, making sure I didn't lose sight of Mercury. Mercury kicked out at me, and I dodged. Kicking away his kicks wouldn't work because, at least when it came to this, he was stronger. I blocked his boots by knocking them aside with my free handers plane, avoiding them, while I continued to block Emerald's shots with my umbrella. Come on, sweetheart, don't be like that, Mercury mocked me. He stepped back and launched at me, aiming to kick me with both of his feet. Emerald also switched her guns back to sickles. God, why am I yawning so much? Emerald also switched her guns back to sickles and charged at me. I flicked my umbrella closed and sidestepped Mercury's attack. As he passed, I grabbed his leg and, using his momentum against him, I threw him into the approaching Emerald. It collided and fell to the ground. I smirked arrogantly at them. This is far from over, Emerald warned me. You're sending me to prison? Roman exclaimed in disbelief from across the roof. You and your henchman, Cinder said calmly. I continued to swear mentally. Me in jail? This was going to put a giant black mark on my record, yet not as big of a mark as the one walking out now would make. I was distracted and yet didn't see Mercury jump back up and run at me. I managed to deflect the blast from his boots even with my closed umbrella. I didn't see the chain come from Emerald's sickle behind me. I wrapped around my umbrella, wrapped around it, and yanked it out of my hands. Once it was free from me, the chain unwrapped and the umbrella flew over the edge of the building into the fighting below. As I watched it go over the edge, Mercury kicked me in the gut. Unable to catch my footing, I fell backwards and slid across the rooftop. What a shame, Mercury said as he and Emerald stood above me. Emerald pointed her gun at my forehead. You would have such a sweet what? You would have such a sweet treat. Man, that makes sense. Oh well, goodbye, Neo. Instead of showing fear, I smirked at them. I wasn't done yet. I swung my legs, tripping Emerald and causing her to fire into the air. Mercury tried to stop me with his boots, but I twirled away into a standing position. I stepped on Mercury's knee. Okay. Did you really do that? And brought my other knee up into his jaw. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to break his stupid jaw, but it did knock him backwards and onto the ground. I backdoors off of Maori. What does any of that mean? And landed on a now standing Emerald sitting on her shoulders. I pulled my way backwards, causing her to fall back. Her hands flew back to try to catch herself. As we fell, I yanked one of her sickles out of her hand and continued to pull backwards. I caught myself in a handstand and swung my body so Emerald went flying across the roof before I swung my legs down and stood up straight. What? It only took me a second to figure out how to transform the weapon into a pistol and point it at Mercury. Or Muckery. Even... who was on the ground rubbing his sore jaw. I was about to activate Scary Neo when Cinder cut in. Okay, children, playtime is over, she stated, turning to us with a hand on her hip. I stared down Mercury. Spell it right! I don't think you spelled Mercury right once! And now you're spelling it even worse! Unless for some reason that officially in the show it's actually spelled with a U and not an E, then they've never spelt it right. Anyways, I could still do it. I could still kill him, a voice whispered inside me. I'm going to jail anyway. No, I couldn't. I wasn't Scary Neo. I rolled my eyes and tossed the gun towards Emerald. Turning on my heel, I strutted back over to Roman, happy that, at least for this time, I beat Mercury and Emerald. My annoyance was short-lived as Cinder turned back to her henchman with a disgusted glare and said, "Turn these two into the police. They need to learn their lesson." With a grunt of effort, Mercury pushed himself to his feet. He grabbed my arm and said, "Right this way, sweetheart." I wanted desperately to punch him in the face, but Cinder was watching. It did make me feel a little better when I saw that a purple bruise was starting to form where I had kneed him. Emerald took Roman's arm and took us down to the street. Air support and more experienced fighters and huntresses had arrived and quickly finished off the last of the Grimm. My eyes drifted over to Wolf. He and some of the random huntsmen saw us getting escorted. The others looked like they wanted to rip Roman and I apart. Wolf tilted his head and watched me closely, asking silently if he should jump in or do anything. I shook my head, acting disgusted that I had been caught. Wolf understood that I didn't want him to do anything, though, and what? And knows ever so slightly. The rest of Tem Rainbow joined them. Rach was resting my umbrella on her shoulder. Good. She would hold on to it for me. Lastly, I saw Team RWBY. Yang recognized me instantly and lunged towards me, but her teammates managed to somehow hold her back. Years of training taught me to never let people see you be weak. So, as she glared at me, trying to pull away from her teammates, I winked. Yang, no, RWBY protested as they struggled to restrain her. I turned my back to them as we came to the soldiers. Oh no, you caught me, Roman said with no small amount of sarcasm. They cuffed us and us into... I don't know, put us into a giant truck, not the us. Oh my god. Can I get a story with actual good grammar? And, not completely screwing up words. Why has every story recently had the worst, so bad grammar? Like, I could look at so many, like, middle school papers, and it'd be like, I could look through a whole class of, like, 100 people and all of their middle school papers and not find as many stupid grammar mistakes as you find in like, one of these stories. Anyways, admittedly, I was afraid. I didn't know the plan. We were surrounded by guards, so Roman couldn't tell me. I didn't know where we were going or what they would do to... Oh my god. Or what they would do to us when we got there. My only ally was Roman, who would leave my side without a second thought if it meant saving his own skin. I was alone. I was weaponless. I was silently terrified. I turned to the guard with his gun pointed at me and grinned. Never let them see you be weak. I soon found myself in an interrogation room. My hands and my ankles were cuffed together as if I'd be stupid enough to try to run. It was a very intimidating factor, though. I had always been capable of fighting without my weapon, but I needed my hands and feet free for that. Right now I was kind of... Oh my god, what? Why? Holy Jesus Christ, dude. Right now I was kind of helpless, yet my training still kicked in and I silently glared at the other three in the room with me. It looked familiar, but it still took me a moment to fully remember. I had never met them before, but some of their information was in the files that Wolf had sent me. The first one was a woman. She had blonde hair that was pulled up into a neat bun. Her glasses helped the stern look that she was giving me as she scanned my every move from the corner behind me. She also held a flat rectangle device which she used to record everything I said or did. An easy job for her, being that I didn't say a single word. She had a white blouse and a purple cape. Her name was Glinda Goodwitch. A man paced in front of me on the other side of the room. His jaw was set in a silent snarl. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man wearing a white wearing a white suit. He had dark hair with white on the sides. He didn't know me, but I was very familiar with General Iron Eud. He was growing increasingly angry at my silence. I then turned my quiet gaze to the last man in the room, my interrogator. He sat across the table from me with a calm but serious expression. He had silver hair and small, dark circular glasses that didn't cover his brown, watchful eyes. He sighed in disappointment as I refused to answer yet another question. His name was Ozpin, and he was the headmaster of Beacon. Just give her to my men, Ozpin. They'll get answers from her the hard way, Ironwood growled in annoyance. My heartbeat increased, but I still stared... But I still stared at the headmaster blankly. Glinda stepped up to us. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I hated having someone behind me, especially when I couldn't do anything about it. She reached from behind me and handed her tablet to Ozpin. As it passed, I briefly caught a glimpse of my picture, along with a familiar face. A memory flashed in my mind of that same face. It was a dark night and very cold. I shivered as the pouring rain poured down in heavy drops on my skin. I leaned over the edge of the metal bin looking for anything to use as a shield from the rain. I gritted my teeth and swore as I cut myself on a piece of glass. Just ignore the small amount of blood, I just ignored the small amount of blood and continued to dig. I struggled to move a larger bag. I was even smaller then and very skinny and frail from the lack of food. There was nothing helpful here. I angrily pulled myself out of the garbage bin and into the alley. I leaned against the brick wall of the alley and slid down to the ground, not caring that it slightly pulled the edge of my soaking wet sweatshirt or that it slightly stretched me. I was too cold, wet, and numb to care. The man, it slightly scratched me. Jeez, it's not even close. A man stepped out of his home and glared when he saw me. He picked up a broom and began to swing it at me. Go, get out of here, shoot, we don't want the likes of you on our streets, he shouted. One of his blows knocked me to the ground and he continued to swing at me. I pushed myself to my feet and ran. Panting for breath, I found another alley. You know there's an E in alley. Just telling you. And collapsed. I was so weak and cold. I hugged my knees to me and set my head on them as I shivered from the rain. Why did he hate me? It's not like I wanted to be here. I hated him. I hated the people who put me here, the people who killed my parents. I felt tears slide down my face and mingle with the rain, which continued to pelt against my back, now raw from the constant onslaught of rain. Then the pressure was suddenly gone. I gasped in surprise to see a large black umbrella covering me and shielding me from the rain. I looked up at the man holding it in shock and a little bit of fear. He was wearing a long coat, his dark purple hair slicked back and a large scar going across his eye. He looked down at me and smiled. Nick Sleep Slicer was my savior, and he became the best mentor anyone of our profession could ask for. I pulled myself out of my past as the headmaster cleared his throat and looked at the tablet. Well, Miss Neopolitan, it seems you've had quite the history. Your parents were killed by assassins for unknown reasons. Because the nearby orphanages were too full, they couldn't take you in. Unable to track down any living relatives, you were sent to the streets, Osmond said. I kept a blank and motionless mask on. I tried not to live in the past. That's where all official records end, Osmond continued. He pulled out a black paper file. He flipped it open and I saw pictures of a few of my past jobs. My eyes opened a little wider in surprise. How did he get a hold of my score? I narrowed my eyes at him as he flipped the file open and began to read. You were then taken in and trained by Nicholas Sleep Slicer, a former bodyguard and assassin like yourself. As he spoke, he pulled out a photo of my old mentor. On the photo, he and I were sneaking across the rooftop. My heart squeezed, and I turned my gaze to the ground as I held back tears. I missed him so much. And like him, you completed every mission successfully. You began your career as an assassin. That's missing an S. You were truly the master of your craft. It's unclear how many you have killed, he continued. He put forward pictures of some of my targets. Each was done quickly and efficiently. I glanced up at the photos and then to the side guiltily. It's not, guilty, Jesus Christ. See, sometimes it is my fault that I say things wrong, but most of the time it's just, the story's fault. It was my job. That didn't mean I liked it or that I liked being reminded of it. Then, for some reason, after you completed your training, you quit your assassination missions and became a henchman. It seems you excelled this too, never failing in your employer or to do your job until today. Why is that? At this point, he looked back at me questioningly. I matched his gaze with a silent glare. I didn't like having my past or my failures being thrown back at me. Realizing that I still wasn't going to talk, he gently adjusted the pictures of my victims. You've killed so many, he murmured gently, and yet you've saved about as many as you've killed. I stared up at him in surprise. How would he know something like that? I see no children here. All of the men and women in these photos were bad people. I highly doubt that this was by accident. I just glared at him. This was none of his business. He leaned closer to me, resting his arms on the table. I instinctively gave him a challenging glare. How many life debts have you collected? How many lives have you saved that won't be found in any of these files? I couldn't meet his gaze anymore. I dropped my eyes to the floor. If anyone knew about this, my score would be ruined, my reputation torn to pieces. I would never be hired again. People would come looking for me. My life was pretty much forfeit. You have no proof of any of this, I said softly, speaking for the first time. Actually, we do, Osmond said smugly, standing up. We have some people on the inside, a few of which you know personally. He looked up... at Ironwood, or to Ironwood, and said, "Send him in." I stood too, ready to face whoever would dare to turn on me. This would ruin their score, even send people on the hunt for him. Did Roman do it to save his own skin? Was it Mercury doing something for Cinder? I glared at the doorway as Ironwood pulled open the door. I couldn't believe my eyes. Don't be mad, okay, the wolf fauna said, scratching the back of his neck uncomfortably. My heart sank low, and I was almost dizzy with disbelief. Wolf betrayed me? Dun dun dun. Okay. So this is taking too long to do this. I'm kind of disappointed that I went from doing 4 chapters to doing 5 to now only doing 3. So there's still so many parts of this. So we're gonna have to kind of like hurry up with this. So yeah, I was hoping to finish this today. It's gonna take so many. Oh, God, that sucks.